You're now listening to the Shift Training Show, where we're focused on positively impacting the quality of human interaction. I'm your host. My name is Flip.
I'm your co-host, Vaughn.
And today we're on part 3 of this relationship Q&A. Vaughn, what are our 2 categories that we're going to be covering for this last part?
So the 2 categories that we have is going to be conflict and relationship challenges. And the other one is all about breakups and what to do on that. So the first question we got for the conflict and relationship challenges is, how do you know or how do you deal with a partner who always argues? I think this is from Mark's question.
Okay, how do you deal with a partner that always argues?
Yeah, I think I'll start off. I think, first of all, you have to understand, where is this coming from? Is it from poor communication? Is it from trauma? Is like a lack of, respect to one another? I think you have to address that right from the beginning. I think if you don't address that right from the beginning, then it will create a bigger mess later in the future. And if you think about a fire alarm, if it's going off every day, then it becomes not safe. The same thing with your emotions. It becomes emotionally unsafe. And that's the part where you have to make a decision. Do you want to stay or do you want to walk away?
I would say something that you mentioned about the alarms going off, making it emotionally unsafe, is wrong. I think the person who is thinking, why do they always argue? There's something wrong. I don't know how to deal with this person, is missing the point. The fire alarm is going off because there's something wrong, not the fire alarm going off is something wrong.
Well, if there is something wrong, that is where you have to communicate, you have to address it. And then if it creates constant chaos, then I think that is a problem if they just want to create a mess. It's like a pattern or behavior that they do, and if it's never addressed and never repaired, then it's going to be a problem.
Sure. I'm going to pick a different stance so we can have some balance or perspective.
All right.
So in there, that answer sounds like it lacks empathy and understanding. A person who is frustrated, who is willing to argue with you, is different from someone who's just, let's say, potentially highly dysregulated and just chronically wanting to fight about everything. That might be the only way they know how to deal with their frustration. So the question becomes, how do you learn how to navigate with somebody who is constantly willing to fight about what they feel? That's a different question, because if you can't even understand why they feel the way that they feel and why their reaction or response to it is that, you don't have the capacity to navigate it with them. At which point, if that becomes the issue, then I would say you have to make a choice about that. Because if you can't figure it out, they can't figure it out, you guys can't figure it out together, now there's a reason to make a decision. But just because it's tough or strenuous or an issue or bothers you that someone always wants to argue and you just want your life to be easy, I think that you're missing it, because that's not how it works. If you're just thinking about it making your life easier, then don't get in a relationship at all.
Right. I think not every person is a devil, right? I think that there is certain patterns that they have, and if it's never repaired, never addressed, then I think my point is just, if that is never going to be fixed, I think peace matters as well for your both well-being.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the next question that we have is, how do you handle arguments in a relationship?
Is that a follow-up was that from Mark?
Yeah.
Okay.
Follow up on that question.
How do you handle arguments? With grace, with understanding. If you're, let's say, emotionally charged and you're not able to be emotionally sober in the moment, meaning not letting the feelings kind of woo-woo you and control you. If you're not in that position, then you need to pause, you need to breathe, you need to do whatever it takes to regulate your nervous system down a little bit before you guys start having the conversation around what's actually going on. And I know that might be more challenging for some people to pace things out. And I know it's easier for some people to just avoid and run away from things altogether. You guys have to find a time that is reasonable for you to be a little bit more level-headed, a little more calm, a little more emotionally sober. Phrase from Tom Bilyeu and Lisa Bilyeu. Thank you very much. And come back to that and look at what's actually going on and try to find a way forward, trying to find a new pattern, new behavior, a new response to the stimulus that led to the argument in the first place. If there's an unmet need, then you have to figure out how you're going to meet it. If someone feels unseen, unheard, whatever that is, and that is the need, then you have to figure out how to make that happen. But that's how you have to proceed with an argument. If you're already in the heat of the battle, the best thing for you to do is actually to go ahead and say, you know what, we need to pause. We need to bow out of this. Find enough sense in your body, if you can, and don't let your ego run the show. Don't let fear run the show. Don't let anger or whatever other feeling you're feeling. Just go ahead and be like, you know what? We need to pause. This ain't working right now. We need to pause. Let's come back to this.
Yeah, I think the key point there is emotionally regulate yourself. Take your time, have some space, and pause and reflect on the argument. And you don't have to instantly react on that conflict or that argument, because when that happens, the damage becomes bigger. If you think about headphones and they are tangled, and if you pull it hard quickly, it becomes worse. But if you do it nice and slow and fix it, it becomes better.
Yeah, I think untangling the mess is a good way to put that. Good way.
Okay, so the next question we have is, why do some women leave when a man is broke?
You can't provide anything, so they leave.
Exactly. Usually, I think for me personally, I think women don't leave the man who is completely broke. Usually, men have hard seasons, but I think it is the trait that they're looking for. For example, they are helpless and making a lot of excuses. They don't have that trait of leadership. They don't have ambition. They don't have that discipline.
They're not showing that they can keep moving forward.
Exactly. So it is very unattractive. So if you imagine a bus driver or a bus, you have a direction. So a couple bumps on the road, it's okay. However, if the driver don't have a map, don't have a direction, and their hands is on the wheels, then they feel unsafe.
Start talking about, I'm going to take a break and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and we're not going to go anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere like I said we would go when you got on this bus.
100.
Yeah, I would say that's a factor. And then again, for in some cases, depending on what it is, if being able to provide resources is of high priority to that lady and you're not doing it, then that's a need, and a key need of hers is not being met. So you should expect her to go find a way to meet her needs. That's just to be expected. I find it interesting that sometimes people get so upset about other people trying to find means to meet their needs before realizing that maybe they failed at the task first. Like, the self-reflection probably should come first. I know it might hurt, but I'm hurt, so I should be mad at you, versus being like, I'm hurt that it came to that and it is my responsibility first. I think that's a reaction to be mindful of. So if somebody needs to go do something else with their life, then let them. Straight up.
Let them. Just like Mel Robbins says, let them. Okay, so next question. Why do men feel pressure to be strong and protective?
Why do men feel pressured to feel strong and protective? I don't feel pressure to do that.
Okay. Well, I think for the most part in general, people feel that pressure. I think it's because what the society and the people that they are around, they put that pressure to be this person without considering the emotional part of that. When you're a little kid, they say, oh, be strong. You feel important in the beginning. However, if there's no dichotomy to that, it feels heavy.
Yeah, I would say the idea of being responsible. Oh man. So I'm gonna go somewhere else. The reason why I don't feel this pressure, that whoever asked this question, who asked this question?
It's a follow-up with
Mark. Follow-up question. Okay, so I don't feel this pressure because somewhere in my life I was taught that as you continue to grow, you will become more responsible. And as a man in particular, the moment you think you want to start calling yourself a man, you better realize you are going to be lifting and carrying heavier stuff until you can't carry heavier stuff. And that comes with the territory of wanting to call yourself or be considered or seen in the society or community you live in as a man. That's just part of the game. So if you don't feel like you want to live to that standard, then that might be where you feel that pressure. Maybe you just feel like it's other people wanting that for you or wanting that of you, but you don't want it for yourself. But for me, my relationship is that evolving and growing as a person is a glorious experience. And I know that it only happens with taking on responsibility and following through, and that leads to growth and progress. So if I like the idea of me growing and progressing, I believe in responsibility and willingly going to pick up the weight in myself. No one's got to pressure me, so I don't feel no pressure. In fact, I'm the one that creates the most pressure for me more than anybody else. So I don't feel that. But I think if you're feeling that, you need to ask yourself, why do you feel that? And what are you so responsible for in reality that makes you feel that way? Because like, if you don't got no kids, you don't got no responsibility.
Luxury.
Yeah. You don't got no, you living good. You don't got no kids. If you don't got no kids and you just got to worry about you and maybe you and one other person that you say you care, remember that's a choice you made willingly on your own behalf. So like, you're choosing that. So there it is. If society is saying, oh, men, this is not whatever, and like, there's like the general men need to do all this stuff. Yeah, I can go with some of these requests are unreasonable. Like sometimes people ask for things that they can't afford to pay for, but it doesn't always mean like that's our job to give them that. If they can't afford to pay for it, we don't got to give it.
Right. Yeah. I think a healthy version of that, if you are doing it for yourself and, keep growing, I think that creates that grounded masculinity, as they say. However, I think the unhealthy version of that is when they try to suppress their emotion, they don't talk about it, and they just keep it in, and they have this pent up emotion, then it becomes like very shameful to them. They don't know how to express it.
Yeah, the other unhealthy part of that is taking on those expectations as if they are everything in the world, not having your own standard. This is part of where like it's important for you as a man to have a clear aim, to have a creed, to have a code of conduct in which you live by. Because if you don't have that clear code of conduct in which you're supposed to honor and live by, everyone else telling you what it should be, you can hear their voice. When you go, no, this is what I'm living for, this is why I'm living, this is how it goes, all that stuff is like, maybe doesn't bother you so much. So I would say get on top of that.
Exactly. Create that code of honor, your personal rule. Now, moving on to our second topic, it's about breakups and moving on. So this first question, I believe, is from Glendy. How do you know when a relationship is worth fighting for or walking away?
That is a fantastic question. If you don't know why you're there, it's kind of hard. And if you're waiting around because you think the person's going to change and you're hoping, you have some fantasy or some vision in your head, but you don't see any progress towards it, I want you to imagine that the vision that you have is actually supposed to be a tangible goal and not a delulu fantasy dream. And if you treat your relationships like they have to have actual manifestation of things, not just, oh, it feels good delulu fantasy to hopium, you can't do that. If you do that, you're going to stay in it longer than you should. You're going to suffer unnecessarily. So I think if you look at it the same way you would measure, are we getting this task done? Am I moving towards the goal that I want? If you measure it, actually look at it, you have an idea of it and you go, okay, well, this is costing me this much in terms of time, energy, emotional load, and from this, I'm gaining something like this. Do I want to continue this experience with this person because I really am just willing to experience this part of life with this person? Or am I looking for something specific and I'm not getting anywhere near the thing that I desire the most because I'm in this relationship with this person?
Yeah, I think it is worth fighting for if the person is willing to repair whatever the damage is, having that accountability to one another, have remorseful when things, gone wrong. And I think it's time to move on if it's repeated disrespect, if there's an emotional and physical abuse. I think that's the part where you have to consider, do you want to walk away or just stay? It's the same thing with, both of you are fixing, for example, maybe a car or a bike. If both of you are fixing this car or bike, then you can ride again. However, if one person is not reciprocating, then it wouldn't be fair for the one person, your partner, because they're carrying all the load, the baggage, and it's not reciprocating.
Yeah, I want to clarify on that. The reciprocation thing doesn't mean always on everything equal. That's not what that means. There might be a season where they're carrying something longer than you, and there may be a season where you're carrying something longer than them. The question is, how do they show up? Like you said, being willing to show up for repair, being willing to put their best foot forward, those types of things, trying to figure it out and work together.
Yeah, absolutely. And we move on to the next question. How long can long distance relationship work?
I think that depends on the people.
Yeah, I believe so. I think there isn't any rule that you 3 months or 6 months or a year, things like that. I think it all depends to the individual. If both have that emotional maturity, loyalty, honesty to one another, I think it will work out. I think as long as also you have that vision of you on how you're gonna close that gap of when to be together. It's like building a bridge on both sides and eventually close that gap. But if one person is not willing to do that, then it wouldn't work.
Yeah, I would also say it depends on how long that will work for you. It depends on how the things you value. So like, talk about, love languages and things, and physical touch is a very high one for me type thing. Like if that's really high for you, then you're gonna have to figure out how to make that work. You know what I mean? If it's lower, but spending quality time is higher for you, if gifts have higher than you, like whatever it is that you value the most, if you're still getting most of what you want or need from the relationship, that gives you more time to figure out how to build a bridge. But for some people, you may have less of that time because of things that you want or need, they're not getting met without you guys being together in person. So it depends on the people, depends on what you guys want and need.
Yeah, that's so true. I think if your love language is physical touch, it's going to be very difficult to continue that relationship. However, if it's just quality time, then you could just FaceTime. We have the social media nowadays. You don't have to just write a letter or any of that. So it's easier nowadays. And the next question is, how do you know someone is serious after a toxic relationship?
How do you know if someone's serious after, meaning like someone else that you're talking to is serious?
Yeah.
You don't know.
Exactly.
You won't know until you get to know the person. So if you want to know if they're serious, just look at how they conduct themselves. Like when they say they're going to do something, how often do they follow through? And how quickly do they follow through? Like, do they get there eventually at a casual pace? And are you okay with them moving at that pace? Or when they say they're going to do something, are they punctual about it? Do they move with urgency? Do they get it done? How does that make you feel? Does that make you feel safe? Does that make you feel nervous? I mean, the challenge after any relationship that, left you hurt or scarred or anything like that is learning how to see the world outside of the lens of your dysregulated nervous system, which is basically impossible. So you're going to have to start to find ways to bring safety back into your own body, and also learn how to see things beyond that lens of your past experience, which is really hard. But you have to be willing to look at what is happening right in front of you. Like, for example, it is a beautiful sunny day over here. We're hiding under this umbrella, but it's a beautiful sunny day. I can see that with my eyes. But if I was having a terrible day, I could be here complaining and whining and pouting about all kinds of stuff. But bruh, it's a beautiful sunny day with these lovely birds and trees and animals here, and I can see it. I have vision. There's plenty of reasons for me to look at things differently. So you're gonna have to make a choice to try to see what's actually going on and not just based on your past experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think perspective matters. And yeah, I think you have to take a look at the behavior that person is portraying. Everyone has to go through some sort of like trauma, and it's inevitable. It's just how life is. And if you haven't gone through hardship, then it's not going to create character and discipline in your life. And I think that once you see the behavior, the pattern, that is what you need to really take a look at closely, because what they say, it might not match what they are doing. So you have to take a look at the behavior instead of what they say. It's the same thing with a little kid, I've learned the lesson, but they keep continuing the bad habit. You have to take a look at the action, not what they say.
Look for congruence. Congruence is the key.
Congruence is the key. And next question is, does the 3-month breakup rule matter?
3 months sounds kind of short, honestly.
Damn.
I don't even know which specific breakup rule, but if they mean 3 months before you start talking to somebody else, I think that's a little short. No cap.
I have a different perspective on this. I think it just all depends on the individual. I mean, some people could just move on like a month, two. I think it all depends. I think there isn't any law or general rule 3 months. I think as long as you have reflected or introspect on this, journal it, speak to somebody who cares about you, loves you, and making sure that you are not keeping it inside of you, because that could create a lot of pressure and you might not have any clarity. I think that as long as you don't dwell for a long period of time, I think that's okay. But at the same time, you have to make a decision. If you don't make a decision, that's time to move on. Just like what Layla said, you can move on when you make a decision. But however, I think it is also important to heal. I think if you think about if you broke your leg, you can't just poking it and start using it again. It might get worse and you might break it again. So time heals. Take your time, make sure you're doing the thing, you're reflecting, you're finding the right lesson from that previous relationship. Same thing with your leg. Make sure you're doing the strengthening, resting it, and all that.
Yeah. I'm going to say time does not heal. That's a bad phrase. I say it's a bad phrase because a lot of people think that if time just passes, it'll be better. This is why there's not really a time limit, but the reason why I specifically say I feel like 3 months is short is I'm going to give you the math real quick. It's something like this. How great is your self-awareness? Are you taking therapy? How good are you at healing or recovering or bouncing back from hard relationships? Was the wound or injury minor sprain, or did you break a leg, right? Like all of these little things. So if you break your leg, you have no experience with broken bones, you have no one to help you, that be a therapist, and you don't do anything to try to figure out how to help yourself, you just sitting around doing whatever is not per se going to help you, but I can tell you're probably going to need more time to figure it out than someone who's been through stuff like this before, has help, has a supportive network of people, has the therapist, has plenty of experience working on themselves and building their own self-awareness. You might bounce back way faster. So not a set rule, but if you don't look at, I have practiced this, no, I have no practice or experience in this, that's how you should know. So for me, based on my observations of a handful of people that are between 25 to 35, I would say 3 months is kind of short for them because they are not properly equipped. They don't study, read, or try to learn anything about anything regarding their experiences. They don't seek help until it's a problem. Like these are all the things that would actually help you get back in the game. So my thing would be, if you want to get back in and start dating or doing whatever, within like 3 months, be very proactive about your recovery. Be proactive about your growth as a person from that last experience. The sooner you can grab the lesson or the gem from that and then start trying to work and apply that in, when you go into your next relationship, you're going to be more likely to be more successful versus coming in with a broken leg and asking someone else to fix it and then wondering why you have the same issue that you had last time.
Yeah, I think that's very important. That makes total sense. If you don't have a supportive system and you have no self-awareness, then it will be very difficult for you. You might create that same pattern that you have, from the previous relationship.
Absolutely.
All right. So we got the next question here. The question is, why is it hard to stop communicating with someone after it didn't work out? I believe this is from Maria.
Okay. This is just a matter of you not letting go of whatever thing you were holding on to.
Yeah, I think also to add to that is, I think attachment is not logical.
It's not.
Right, yeah. And if you've been together with your partner for a long period of time, you have created this fantasy, this vision that you guys have together. You have a specific routine that both of you are doing. And all of a sudden that is gone. Then your brain cannot fathom that sometimes, because of the attachment that we talk about.
Right.
I think this is the same thing with, playing your favorite song over and over again, and then all of a sudden, it's gone. In your head, it keeps playing, but in reality, it's not there.
Yeah, I would say your brain is running a loop. It's running a program that it felt like it needed to. And then sometimes some of the situations or things that you run into is really, there's a question cooking in the back of your mind. And our brains are really good, even if we don't consciously remember the question, trying to puzzle and figure it out, and it might serve us the answer later. And we're like, oh, yeah, why did that randomly come to me? Sometimes that happens. So there's a lot of neurology to go into on that, but basically it's still holding on to something that there was a lot of emotional energy around, we'll say, a lot of emotional value or meaning. So the neurochemistry in there wired that in pretty darn good.
Yeah.
I think if it's difficult, hard or difficult is not a problem. You just have to make a choice to start practicing something else. So every time that I would normally get ready to reach out to this person, I'm going to text somebody else instead, or I'm going to do this instead. Every time I think I feel that impulse, I'm going to train myself to do something else. You're going to start to reprogram that neurology, and it'll get easier.
Just like a habit, if you've read the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, I think it's the same thing. If you have a certain cue, you want to replace it with something else. And I think sometimes letting go, it could be very difficult, but holding on to it is much, much harder.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, so following up to this, since we are talking about breakups and moving on, next question is what we added on this question.
Awesome, bonus round.
Yeah, bonus. How to repair before the relationship ends.
Okay, cool. So when we're talking about breakups and we're talking about all these different questions that we just answered, understanding one of the most critical tools for relationships is repair. You need to know how to, one, engage with somebody when something is difficult. You need to know how to potentially make a big mess, and then you need to know how you guys are going to repair and move forward. I think one of the things that I really appreciate learning from Jordan Peterson is about having basically like your terms for engagement. Like when we know we're going to go into a conflict, hey, like this is how we start it. This might be the rules for when we're in it. No yelling at each other, no this, no that, no slamming, no whatever. And then at the end, we have to find a solution within 24 to 48 hours. Mm-hmm. And when we walk away from that, we have to hug at some point, whatever it is. Whatever your terms are, I think that's important. So one, you need to know how you're going to deal with it. And you guys got to be in agreement with how you're going to deal with it. You set this up before you get into the issue.
Mm-hmm. Not during.
And secondly, then I would say after that, it's going to be, you have to walk through that process, and through practicing that process, both being willing vessels to do the thing, it's going to help a lot, because what you're doing is you're rebuilding trust. And that's the point of repair.
Right. Yeah. It takes two to tango,
Yeah. And you have to be willing to say, I did make that mistake. How can I make it right? Great. And the other person say, yes. And my role in that was this. How can I make it right? We shouldn't really have to say, well, you did, and
No blaming.
No blaming. That doesn't help in your repair. It doesn't help at all. So when you're in it before you're gonna end the relationship, how can you do that? Is you got to start having some difficult conversations. You got to know how you're gonna walk into it, and you guys have to be aiming towards a similar outcome. Not I need to win so they lose or any of that. Like you need to go, what do we aim for together? And then move towards that thing. And if you need help, you need a therapist, then get a therapist, get a counselor, get someone to help you guys walk through that process of repair.
Yeah, I think that's a very important key point in what you said. If you have a conflict with your partner, it's not about you winning and the other person loses. If one person wins and one person loses, both of you lose, because it is a team. And I think that repair is a skill that we all need to develop. I think some people, once becomes uncomfortable, they abandon, they leave, and they don't have the ability to stay in that comfort, and the relationship doesn't grow. I think that's very important. So repair means, what does that look like? What does that look like exactly when we miss repair?
It means that after a hard conversation, if you went through the repair process properly, you guys should be closer in terms of understanding one another. And you should have found a way to come back to whatever level of trust, care, or love that you had prior to that discussion.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to fix that in the beginning. It is very manageable, especially there's a lot of, softness, willingness to forgive the other person in the beginning. It's like having a crack on the wall.
It's the hopium.
Yeah, exactly. And then, if you just ignore it, it becomes bigger later in the future. You can't be surprised, why did this happen? It is because, it collapsed because of the previous damage that has occurred.
Absolutely. And then we have, what is it, following up with how to repair after something happens, like after the breakup? How do you take care of yourself?
Yeah. So what to do after breakups and what will help to heal?
Yeah. Okay. So if your repair attempts in the relationship fail and you find yourself out of a relationship, you're by yourself and you're hurt, you know, you need to find a way to repair what you feel is broken or missing. If you're trying to gain understanding or insight, yeah. Now, in some cases, you don't always need to go backwards into the past to find a way forward into the future. However, I would say the caveat with that is if you don't at least look to check to see if there is a pattern or habit that you repeat that you must address, it will show its ugly face to you in the future again. So if you don't really want to see it, then yeah, you kind of need to address it. But you can also still move forward in your life and learn ways to conduct yourself differently. So I'll give an example. An example is if every time I get triggered, I lash out at somebody and I freaking just blast them with the rudest language and I blame them and I just want to take it out on them. And that's my habit. And people have told me that's my habit. And I go, oh, it's okay. I feel okay. I feel better. Like I don't feel like I'm hurt so bad. I can move forward into a new relationship now. But you didn't address that pattern, you're going to face the same thing. And you're going to get whooped again. And you're going to keep getting whooped until you learn the lesson. This is called being trapped in the loop. And you're trapped in the loop until you learn to have a different response to the thing that led you to the loop. But if it's something like it didn't work out, it was hurtful, I really wanted this to happen, but it was not so much of a pattern that was highly my fault. Like I did this, you know, if it's more of a, we just decided like it wasn't working for us. We both wanted different things, that kind of thing. And you're hurt. That's fine. You just got to move forward. You got to let go of that vision, build a new one.
That bridge. Oh, okay. I thought you said something else.
Oh, no.
Not the viewer, but the bridge.
No. You got to build a bridge. You got to,
exactly.
If the bridge fell apart,
Right.
then, you know, you have to find a new way forward. You have to find your own path forward. What are you looking for? How do you do that? I think every failed relationship is an opportunity to gain clarity and grow with yourself. And if you sleep on that, you miss a great opportunity.
Yeah, it will, like you mentioned, it will be a loop. It will be a repeated pattern until you actually learn the lesson. I think also to add to that is, first of all, you have to accept reality.
Yeah.
I think most people, once they break up, they still have this imagination they could get back together. They stop texting, then blah, blah. And that is, what is that called?
Delulu. No Delulu. Do not feed the Delulu. One of the best things you can do for your healing is stop feeding Delulu. If you're going to feed Delulu, feed a new Delulu that has nothing to do with that. That's going to be good for you. And honestly, when you're by yourself, take all that same time and energy and whatever other stuff you were investing into that relationship, just invest it back into yourself and your own life. That will expedite your healing. For men in particular, this one be killing me right here. I feel like men do not understand this. If you do this and stuff falls apart and you're like, oh man, I feel so bad. Like, what do? I have all this extra time. Bro, what would you do for yourself if you could do something for yourself? Go do it. Because in reality, for men, part of our healing process and the reason why we're able to go, like this is almost like wired in survival type stuff, is us making progress towards something helps us to feel better about life. Helps us to feel more fulfilled, helps us feel like we're worth something, we're valuable, like we appreciate ourselves, our self-esteem goes up. So those things help us to repair, because that's mostly what we're composed of, honestly. We want respect, we want to be respected, right? If you get whooped and you don't try to help yourself up, are you showing yourself that you respect yourself? You're definitely not. So you got to get back on the horse, you got to do what you need to do to make yourself better. So you need to reinvest in yourself. Ladies, yeah, treat yourself, but not treat yourself like spoil and waste, but treat yourself well. Yeah. Take good care of yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, don't rush in anything that will create more chaos. But what you said in regards of for men, I think for the most part, men are, what they're doing is they go drink, suppress the emotion and not really address it. And when that happens, we already know, like you said, it will create a loop.
Yeah, absolutely. And can't be going on now I'm jaded, so I'm going to do all that. It won't help you, man. It won't help you. I really feel like people, oh, man. Okay, so this is interesting. I think that healing and growth are very tightly woven together. If you think about a plant, if something happens to the plant and it's damaged, and you think about the plant needs to repair or heal, right? It's going to do that and continue to grow. But I think that the process that leads to the healing is the same process of growth. It's generating new cells. It's doing this. It's, like that whole process is the same. So if you need to heal, you need to start focusing on how can you grow? Focus on how can you build yourself up? How can you do that? And the healing will come. I think a lot of people don't understand that relationship.
Yeah, healing begins when you stop feeding the wound.
That's it. And start focusing on repair and building.
And I believe that is it for our questions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you all so much for submitting your questions for this 3-part series. We really enjoyed talking about this kind of stuff. We have so much funny things we could talk about, but if there's any other topics you'd like us to cover, you're willing to submit some more questions to us, we'd be glad to discuss them. Anything you want that has to do with human interaction, we are all for it and all about it. Bon, is there anything else you want to say to them?
That's it. That's it for us. And don't forget to like, share, and comment.
Subscribe, follow, all the things. We appreciate you guys' time and hope that you have a beautiful day.